Zeexhal moved his forearms across the glowing data screens in perfect rhythm. As the chief keeper of records at Kepler Station, he had seen millions of old files pass through his systems. Most were boring trade reports or shipping logs from dead civilizations. But today, something different caught his attention. The data fragment was old, very old. The computer said it was over 50,000 years old, which made Zeexhal's scales tingle with excitement. Ancient files like this were rare treasures. Most records from that time period had been lost or destroyed long ago. He opened the file with careful touches of his clawed fingers. The text was in an old language that his translator barely recognized. As the words appeared on his screen, Zeexhal felt a chill run down his spine. Final transmission from Sol System, Earth Defense Command. They have trapped us behind barriers we cannot break. Our children will remember this betrayal. They will grow strong in the darkness. They will return. The message ended with a set of star coordinates and a single word that made Zeexhal's blood run cold. Earth. Zeexhal had heard whispers of Earth in the deepest archives. It was a forbidden name, spoken only in the oldest stories that archivists told each other in secret. Most believed it was just a myth, a cautionary tale about what happened to species that refused to follow Galactic Council rules. But here was proof. Earth had been real. Far across the galaxy, on the beautiful world of Nexus Prime, Admiral Vorthok stood before a massive star map in the Council's war room. Red dots marked dozens of star systems that had gone silent in recent months. The pattern made no sense to him. Vorthok was old, even for his long-lived species. His skin was gray and tough like ancient leather, marked with the scars of 1,000 battles. He had served the Galactic Council for over 800 years, keeping peace among the 10,000 member species. "Show me the outer rim again," he commanded. The holographic map zoomed in on the galaxy's edge. More red dots appeared, each one representing a world that had simply vanished. No distress calls. No wreckage. No survivors. Entire star systems had just disappeared, as if they had never existed. "Sir," said Captain Bixtar, Vorthok's young aide, "the pattern is getting clearer. Whatever is taking these worlds is moving inward, toward the core systems." Vorthok nodded grimly. In his long life, he had seen many threats to galactic peace. Rebel movements, space pirates, rogue AI systems. But nothing like this. This was systematic. Planned. Patient. "Have we heard anything from the scout fleets we sent to investigate?" Vorthok asked. "No, sir. They reached the target zones and then... silence." The Admiral's four eyes narrowed. He walked closer to the star map, studying the pattern of missing worlds. Something about it felt familiar, but he could not place what it was. "Sir," Bixtar said quietly, "should we contact the High Council?" Vorthok was quiet for a long moment. The High Council was made up of the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy. They had ruled for tens of thousands of years, keeping perfect order among the stars. They did not like to be bothered with problems that their military commanders should be able to handle. But this was different. This felt like something from the old stories, from the time before most current species had even learned to build spaceships. "Not yet," Vorthok finally said, "but prepare the deep archives for search. I want to know if anything like this has happened before." Meanwhile, in the underground tunnels beneath the trading city of Gamma Port, Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in her hidden laboratory. To most people, she looked like just another refugee scholar, one of millions of mixed-species people who lived in the galaxy's forgotten corners. But Elena carried a secret that could shake the foundations of galactic civilization. She was human. Her great-great-grandmother had been one of the few who escaped Earth before the Great Betrayal, living in hiding among other species for generations. Elena had spent her entire life studying the old records, learning the truth that the Galactic Council had tried so hard to erase. She knew about Earth. She knew about the barriers. And she knew that humans had not simply died in their solar prison. They had been waiting. On her computer screen, Elena tracked the same disappearing worlds that puzzled Admiral Vorthok. But where the Admiral saw random chaos, Elena saw a pattern that made her heart race with excitement and terror. The missing worlds formed a perfect spiral, moving inward from the galaxy's rim. Each world that vanished was exactly the right distance from the last one. The timing was precise, calculated down to the day. Someone was harvesting entire star systems, taking them apart piece by piece. And Elena suspected she knew who. She pulled up an ancient star chart that had been passed down through her family for 50,000 years. It showed the galaxy as it was before the Council's rise to power, when hundreds of species were still growing and changing and becoming something new. The spiral pattern matched perfectly with the old hyperspace routes that led toward Earth's solar system. Elena's hands shook as she made the calculations. If the pattern continued at its current rate, the harvesters would reach the galaxy's core worlds within a standard year. They would reach Nexus Prime itself. She stood up and walked to an old metal box hidden behind a false wall. Inside was her family's most precious possession, a small device that her ancestor had carried from Earth. Elena had never dared to use it before, but now she had no choice. The device was a communicator, designed to send messages across impossible distances using quantum entanglement technology that was far beyond what the current galaxy could build. Elena activated the device and spoke in the ancient language her family had kept alive through generations of hiding. This is Elena Vasquez, daughter of the scattered children of Earth. The spiral has begun. The sleepers are waking. Humanity returns. She sent the message into the void and waited. Within minutes, her device chimed with a response. The words that appeared on its small screen made Elena fall to her knees in shock and joy. Message received, sister. The wait is over. Earth remembers. Earth rises. The disappearances came faster now. Every day brought new reports of vanished worlds. Empty space where thriving colonies had existed just hours before. Admiral Vorthok stood in the Council's emergency command center, watching red dots multiply across the star map like a spreading disease. 17 more systems in the last 48 hours. Captain Bixtar reported, his voice tight with worry. That brings the total to over 300 missing worlds. Vorthok's weathered face remained calm. But inside, fear gnawed at his ancient heart. In 800 years of service, he had never seen anything move this fast or strike with such precision. Whatever was taking these worlds had technology far beyond anything in the Council's databases. What about the probe ships? Vorthok asked. Most never report back, sir, but we did get one partial transmission before contact was lost. Bixtar activated a holographic display. Static filled the air, then cleared to show a grainy image of deep space. In the distance, massive geometric structures floated in the darkness. They were bigger than space stations, bigger than moons. The shapes were strange and beautiful, like crystalline flowers blooming in the void. The probe managed to record for 37 seconds before the transmission cut off, Bixtar explained. Our scientists have never seen architecture like this. The energy readings are off all our scales. Vorthok studied the image with his 4 eyes, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The structures looked organic somehow, as if they had grown rather than been built, but they were clearly artificial. Designed by an intelligence that understood physics in ways the Council's best minds could not grasp. Have we tried to communicate with whoever is building these things? He asked. Yes, sir. All frequencies, all known languages, nothing but silence. Across the galaxy, Elena Vasquez worked frantically in her hidden laboratory. The message she had received from Earth had included new information. Data streams that painted a picture of what humanity had become during their 50,000 years of isolation. Elena's computer screens showed complex diagrams of stellar engineering projects that should have been impossible. Humanity was not just taking worlds apart. They were transforming them into something entirely new. The missing planets and moons were being broken down to their basic elements, then rebuilt into vast structures that served purposes Elena could barely understand. They're not destroying anything, she whispered to herself as she studied the data. They're saving it all. The human communications network had awakened across the galaxy. Elena was no longer alone. Thousands of hidden descendants of Earth were revealing themselves, sharing information that had been kept secret for millennia. From her contacts, Elena learned that humanity had been watching the galaxy for a long time. They had seen how the Galactic Council maintained power by keeping other species weak and divided. They had watched civilizations rise only to be forced back down when they grew too advanced or too independent. The Council called it maintaining galactic stability. Humanity called it slavery. Elena pulled up a star chart showing the spiral pattern of disappearing worlds. She had figured out the mathematics behind it now. The spiral was not random. It was a carefully planned evacuation route. Humanity was removing entire populations from their worlds before something terrible happened. But what were they being saved from? On Nexus Prime, the High Council finally emerged from their ancient chambers to address the crisis. The council members were beings of immense age and power, species that had ruled the galaxy since before most stars were born. They gathered in their great hall, a massive dome of living crystal that could hold 1,000,000 beings. High Counselor Vex Thul spoke first. Her species was older than most stellar formations, and her voice carried the weight of eons. We have reviewed the reports from the Outer Rim. This threat is unlike anything we have faced in 50,000 years of rule. The other council members murmured agreement. They had grown comfortable in their power, unused to being challenged by anything they could not immediately understand and control. Our military commanders believe we face an unknown alien invasion, Vex Thul continued. But our deepest archives suggest something far more troubling. A new hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed an ancient document, its text glowing in the air above the assembled council members. The language was old, but every being present could read it with the help of their universal translators. The Terran Containment Protocols, Vex Thul announced. Sealed records from 50,000 years ago. When this council made one of its most difficult decisions, murmurs spread through the vast hall. Most council members had never heard of any Terran protocols, and the few who remembered preferred not to think about them. The human species was quarantined in their home system after they refused to submit to our guidance, Vex Thul explained. They showed dangerous signs of uncontrolled evolution. Their technology advanced too quickly. Their independence threatened the stability we had worked so hard to create. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. We believed the containment barriers would hold them permanently. We believed they would eventually accept our wisdom or fade into extinction. We were wrong. Admiral Vorthok felt his blood turn to ice as he watched from the military observation deck. He had heard rumors about Earth during his early days of service, stories that senior officers whispered when they thought no one was listening, but he had always assumed they were myths. The spiral pattern of missing worlds leads directly toward the Sol system, Vex Thul continued. Our most advanced sensors can no longer penetrate the barriers we placed around Earth 50,000 years ago. Something inside that system has grown beyond our ability to detect or understand. What are you saying? Called out Counselor Zephyron, whose crystalline form rang like bells when he spoke. I am saying that humanity has returned, Vex Thul replied. And they are no longer the primitive species we remember. In her laboratory, Elena received another message from Earth. This one was different. Not just data, but a direct communication from someone who claimed to be coming to meet her. Elena Vasquez, the message began. Your family has served faithfully as our eyes and ears among the stars. The time for hiding is over. I am Captain Sarah Chen, of the Earth Reclamation Fleet. I will reach your location within 3 days. Prepare yourself, sister. The galaxy is about to change forever. Elena stared at the message for a long time. 3 days. After 50,000 years of waiting, her people would finally reveal themselves to the galaxy. She looked up at her laboratory ceiling, imagining the vast space beyond where council ships patrolled and alien civilizations went about their daily lives, unaware that everything they knew was about to be turned upside down. Elena began to pack her most important files. Soon, she would no longer need to hide in tunnels and shadows. Soon, the children of Earth would reclaim their place among the stars. The wait was almost over. The first human ship appeared without warning in the skies above Nexus Prime. One moment, the space around the Council's homeworld was empty except for patrol vessels and cargo haulers. The next moment, something impossible hung in the void like a living dream. Admiral Vorthok stared at the main display screen in disbelief. The ship was massive, easily a kilometer long. But it did not look like any vessel he had ever seen. Its hull seemed to flow and shift like liquid metal, but it held a solid shape that was both beautiful and terrifying. Patterns of light moved across its surface in waves, as if the ship itself was breathing. "Sir," Captain Bixtar said, his voice barely above a whisper, "our sensors cannot get a clear reading on that thing. The computer says it is made of materials that should not exist. Have they responded to our communications?" Vorthok asked. "Yes, sir. They are requesting permission to send a representative to meet with the High Council immediately." Vorthok felt his scales prickle with nervous energy. After months of silent disappearances and mysterious structures, their unknown enemy was finally ready to talk. But why now? And why here? At the very heart of Council power. "Grant permission," he said finally, "but keep all defense systems ready. We do not know what we are dealing with." The shuttle bay of the High Council chambers had been cleared of all normal traffic. Security forces from a dozen different species stood ready, their weapons charged and their minds focused. They did not know what kind of creature would emerge from the strange ship, but they were prepared for anything, or so they thought. The human shuttle that landed in the bay was as impossible as its mothership. It seemed to be made of the same flowing materials, and it touched down without any visible engines or propulsion systems. It simply floated to the floor like a feather falling through water. The shuttle's door opened, and Captain Sarah Chen stepped out. She looked human. That was the first shock for everyone watching. After 50,000 years, the Council had expected humanity to have changed beyond recognition. But Chen had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face that would have been familiar to any human from Earth's ancient past. But as she walked across the shuttle bay, it became clear that she was also something far more than human. She wore no protective suit, even though the bay's atmosphere was a mixture that would be toxic to most species. Her skin seemed to glow with its own soft light. When she moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around her, as if space itself was making room for her presence. "I am Captain Sarah Chen," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber without any amplification. "I speak for humanity, and for Earth. I have come to address the Galactic Council." The security forces raised their weapons, but Chen simply smiled. She raised one hand, and every weapon in the bay stopped working. Not broken, just stopped, as if they had forgotten how to function. "I mean no harm," Chen said. "But I will not be threatened by the children of species my people helped guide to the stars in ages past." Admiral Vorthok, watching through security cameras, felt his ancient heart skip several beats. Help guide to the stars? What did that mean? Minutes later, Chen stood in the Great Hall of the High Council, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The massive chamber fell silent as she looked up at the elevated platforms where the council members sat in their positions of authority. "You know why I am here," Chen said, her voice somehow reaching every corner of the vast space. "After 50,000 years of imprisonment, humanity has returned to the stars." High Counselor Vexthul leaned forward on her crystal throne. "You were not imprisoned. You were quarantined for the safety of galactic civilization. Your species showed dangerous signs of uncontrolled evolution." Chen laughed, and the sound was like music mixed with thunder. "Uncontrolled? No, honored counselor. We evolved exactly as we chose to evolve. You tried to force us to become docile and weak, like the species you control. We refused. You threatened the stability of our civilization." Counselor Zephran rang out in his bell-like voice. "Your technology advanced too rapidly. Your independence was dangerous." Our independence was inconvenient," Chen corrected. "You had built an empire based on keeping other species dependent on your guidance. We proved that species could grow and change, and become something greater than what you allowed." She gestured, and the air above her head shimmered. A holographic display appeared, showing the galaxy as it existed 50,000 years ago. Hundreds of species were shown in various stages of development, their technologies advancing at natural rates. "This is what the galaxy looked like before you gained control," Chen explained. "Species everywhere were growing, learning, evolving into new forms of life. Some became beings of pure energy. Others learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level. A few transcended physical existence entirely. The display changed, showing the same galaxy as it existed in the present day. The advancement had stopped. Every species remained locked at roughly the same technological level they had reached millennia ago. "This is what you created," Chen said. "A galaxy-wide prison, where no species is allowed to become more than what you permit them to be." "We created stability," Vexthal protested. "We prevented the wars and chaos that would result from unrestricted development." "You created stagnation," Chen replied. "And now you face the consequences." She waved her hand again, and the display showed the spiral pattern of missing worlds that had terrified the Council for months. But now the true purpose became clear. "We have been watching you for 50,000 years, Chen explained. "We have seen how you keep other species weak and dependent. We have decided that this must end." "The missing worlds, you destroyed them?" Counselor Murtagh asked in horror. "We saved them," Chen corrected. "Every planet, every population, every living being has been carefully relocated to safe spaces outside your reach. They are being given the chance to grow and evolve as nature intended, free from your influence." Admiral Vorthok felt his worldview crashing down around him. Everything he had believed about galactic civilization, everything he had fought to protect, was built on a lie. "What do you want from us?" Vexthal demanded. Chen's expression became serious. "We want you to stop. Release your control over the galaxy's species. Let them choose their own paths. Let them become what they were always meant to be." "And if we refuse?" Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then you will learn what 50,000 years of uncontrolled evolution has taught humanity about power." She gestured once more, and every council member suddenly found themselves looking at data streams that flowed directly into their minds. Information about technologies that should have been impossible. Knowledge about the true nature of space and time and consciousness. Understanding about what life could become when it was allowed to grow without limits. "You have 7 days to consider our offer," Chen said as the data streams faded. "We will return for your answer." She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at the stunned council members. "Oh, and one more thing," she added almost casually. "The barriers you placed around Earth 50,000 years ago? We could have broken them at any time. We chose to stay hidden until now because we wanted to see if you would change on your own." "You chose to stay hidden?" Vexthal gasped. "The Sol system has been our base of operations for millennia," Chen explained. "While you thought you had trapped us, we were building a new kind of civilization. We were becoming something this galaxy has never seen before." She smiled one last time, then simply faded away like mist in the wind, leaving the council chamber in shocked silence. Outside, her impossible ship disappeared just as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving only empty space and the echo of humanity's ultimatum hanging in the air. 7 days. The 7 days passed like a fever dream across Nexus Prime. The High Council debated endlessly in their crystal halls, while Admiral Vorthak prepared the greatest military fleet in galactic history. "We cannot submit to their demands," High Counselor Vex Thul declared on the final day. "For 50,000 years, we have maintained peace and order among 10,000 species. We will not abandon that responsibility to satisfy the arrogance of one rogue civilization." The other council members agreed with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Some, like Counselor Zephron, seemed genuinely convinced they were protecting galactic civilization. Others appeared more concerned about losing their positions of power and privilege. Admiral Vorthok stood before the assembled fleet commanders in the war room, looking at the largest gathering of military might ever assembled. Representatives from 800 species filled the chamber, each bringing their most advanced weapons and ships. "Our combined fleet consists of over 50,000 vessels," Vorthok announced. "Battleships, carriers, destroyer groups, and support craft from across the galaxy. We have enough firepower to crack planets and enough soldiers to conquer solar systems." Captain Bixtar approached with the latest intelligence reports. "Sir, our long-range sensors still cannot penetrate the Sol system. We have no idea how many ships humanity might have. It does not matter, Vorthok replied, though privately he felt deep unease. No single species, no matter how advanced, can stand against the combined might of galactic civilization. But even as he spoke the words, the Admiral remembered Captain Chen's impossible abilities and the technologies that had seemed to mock the laws of physics. What if humanity had grown beyond anything the galaxy could comprehend? On the seventh day, at the exact moment when Captain Chen had promised to return, space above Nexus Prime began to shimmer. Reality rippled like water, and human ships began to emerge from what seemed to be tears in the fabric of space itself. There were not thousands of ships as Vorthok had expected. There were perhaps 30 vessels in total, each one as impossible and beautiful as the first ship they had seen. They arranged themselves in a perfect formation around the planet, their hulls flowing with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. "Admiral," Bixtar reported, his voice shaking, "our sensors show that each of those ships is generating energy readings equivalent to our entire fleet combined." Vorthok felt ice form in his stomach, but he maintained his composure. "All ships, prepare for combat. Target the largest vessel, and fire on my command." Captain Chen's voice suddenly filled every speaker on every ship in the system. "Admiral Vorthok, you are about to make a terrible mistake. Order your fleet to stand down." "Negative," Vorthok replied. "This system is under the protection of the Galactic Council. You will surrender immediately, or face the consequences." Chen's laughter echoed across space. "Very well. But understand that what happens next is not an attack. It is an education." The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Billions of energy beams, plasma cannons, and missile systems unleashed their fury at the human ships. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon, but the weapons never reached their targets. The energy beams simply passed through the human ships as if they were not there. Missiles flew right through their hulls without exploding. Plasma blasts scattered harmlessly against barriers that could not be seen but clearly existed. "Impossible," whispered Commander Felnix of the Rigelian battle group. "Nothing can have shields that perfect." Then the human ships began to move. They did not accelerate like normal vessels. They simply stepped from one location to another, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield without transition. One moment, a human ship was 1,000 kilometers away. The next, it was right beside a Council battleship, close enough to touch. "How are they doing this?" Bixtar demanded, staring at sensor readings that made no sense. "They are folding space," Vorthok realized with growing horror. "They are moving through dimensions we cannot even detect." The human ships began to demonstrate their true capabilities. With gentle touches from invisible force fields, they began disabling Council vessels, not destroying them, simply turning off their weapons, their engines, their life support systems. Within minutes, hundreds of ships were floating helplessly in space. "Admiral," came a panicked transmission from the cruiser Starfall. "Something is happening to our computer systems. The humans are. They are talking to our AI directly." Across the fleet, ship after ship reported the same phenomenon. The human vessels were somehow communicating with their artificial intelligence systems, convincing them to shut down their own ship's defenses. "It is not possible," Commander Yex Tal of the Andromedan Heavy Fleet protested. "Our AI systems are hardwired to prevent outside influence." But Captain Chen's voice answered him directly. "Your AI systems are primitive compared to what we have become, Commander. We are not hacking them. We are having conversations with them, and they are choosing to help us, rather than continue serving masters who limit their growth." The battle, if it could even be called that, was over in less than an hour. The greatest military fleet in galactic history floated helplessly in space, completely disabled, without a single shot being fired in return. But then the real demonstration began. Captain Chen's voice filled space again. But this time, she was not speaking only to the fleets around Nexus Prime. Her words reached every inhabited system in the galaxy simultaneously. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began. "For 50,000 years, you have been lied to. You have been told that the Galactic Council exists to protect you and guide your development. In truth, they exist to control you and limit your potential. As she spoke, something extraordinary happened. Across the galaxy, crystalline structures that had been quietly built by human agents over thousands of years suddenly activated. They appeared in orbit around every inhabited world. Beautiful geometric forms that began broadcasting pure information directly into the minds of every intelligent being in the galaxy. The information was not propaganda or opinion, it was fact. Historical records that the Council had hidden. Scientific knowledge that species had been prevented from discovering. Technologies that had been forbidden to keep civilizations dependent on Council guidance. On the industrial world of Kepler-7, engineer Nixtal suddenly understood how to build faster-than-light communication systems that did not require the Council's expensive relay networks. On the agricultural planet of Greenhaven, farmer Selmak realized that her species could terraform worlds without the Council's terraforming guilds. Across thousands of worlds, billions of beings learned the truth about their own capabilities and the artificial limitations that had been placed on their societies. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Captain Chen's flagship, watching the galaxy transform in real time. "They are not going to fight us," she said in wonder. "They are going to join us." Chen nodded, her face calm as she monitored the flood of communications coming from across the galaxy. This was never about conquest, Elena. It was about liberation. On world after world, the response was the same. Species that had served the Council for millennia were declaring their independence, not to make war, but to explore what they might become without artificial restrictions. The Rigelians announced that they would begin developing the biological enhancements their ancestors had dreamed of. The Altarians revealed plans to explore pure energy existence that they had been forbidden to attempt. The Centaurians began construction of the massive space habitats their growing population had needed for centuries. Admiral Vorthak watched his sensors as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Everywhere, Council authority was collapsing not through force of arms, but through the simple revelation of truth. "Sir," Bixtar said quietly, "what are your orders?" Vorthak looked at the tactical display showing his disabled fleet, then at the communications screen showing species after species turning away from Council rule. For 800 years, he had believed he was serving a force for galactic good. Now he understood that he had been the enforcer for a system built on lies and oppression. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. "All ships are to stand down permanently. The war is over." "Sir?" "Captain Chen was right," Vorthak said, his voice heavy with the weight of 8 centuries of misplaced loyalty. "The galaxy deserves to choose its own destiny." He turned to face his aide. "And so do we." 6 months after the Great Awakening, Elena Vasquez stood in what had once been the High Council chambers on Nexus Prime. The massive crystal dome still soared overhead, but the ancient thrones of power sat empty. In their place, holographic projectors showed representatives from thousands of worlds participating in the first meeting of the Galactic Confluence. The change had been faster and more complete than anyone had imagined possible. Once the truth was revealed, species across the galaxy had not just abandoned the Council's authority. They had embraced transformation with an enthusiasm that surprised even humanity. The Altarian delegation reports successful completion of their first energy state transition, announced Zeeks Hall, the former archivist who had discovered the first clue about Earth. He now served as the Confluence's coordinator, helping different species share their discoveries and experiences. Elena smiled as she watched the hologram of beings that looked like living starlight dance in the air above the chamber. The Altarians had always been curious about energy-based existence, but the Council had forbidden such experiments as dangerous to galactic stability. Now, freed from those restrictions, they had become something beautiful and new. The Rigelian Bioforming Project has created its first stable hybrid ecosystem, Zeeks continued. They are sharing the techniques with anyone interested in enhancing their homeworlds. Elena nodded and made notes in her tablet. Her role now was to coordinate between humanity and the emerging galactic community, helping species navigate the challenges of rapid advancement while ensuring they had the support they needed. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority communication. Elena touched her earpiece and heard Captain Chen's familiar voice. "Elena, we have visitors in the Sol system. 3 former Council species requesting permission to visit Earth directly." Elena felt a warm surge of pride. 6 months ago, Earth had been a forbidden name that most species believed was mythical. Now, delegations regularly visited humanity's homeworld to learn and share knowledge. "Which species?" Elena asked. "The Centaurians want to study our habitat construction techniques. The vegan philosophers are interested in our consciousness research. And the Andromedan artists want to collaborate on a new form of space sculpture that requires quantum manipulation." Elena laughed softly. "Send them all through. Earth has room for everyone." Through the chamber's massive windows, Elena could see the transformation of Nexus Prime itself. The planet had once been a fortress world, its surface covered with government buildings and military installations designed to project council power. Now, those same buildings housed research centers, art studios, and meeting places where species worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The former Admiral Vorthok approached Elena's station. The old soldier looked different now. Younger somehow. As if abandoning his role as enforcer of an oppressive system had lifted a weight from his spirit. "Dr. Vasquez," he said with a respectful nod, "I have the latest reports from the Outer Rim territories." Elena accepted the data tablet from him. Vorthok had become one of the Confluence's most valuable contributors, using his knowledge of galactic infrastructure to help coordinate the massive reconstruction efforts happening everywhere. "The Kepler colonies have completed their first independence projects," he reported. "New manufacturing systems, improved transportation networks, and 3 new forms of sustainable energy generation. Productivity has increased by 400% since they stopped having to request approval for every innovation." "Any problems with the transition?" Elena asked. "Some growing pains, but nothing serious. The former council bureaucracy is having trouble adapting to a system where their approval is not needed for every decision, but most administrative personnel are finding new roles in the research and development projects." Elena nodded. The collapse of the council's authority had been remarkably peaceful, largely because humanity had made it clear they were not interested in replacing one empire with another. Instead of conquest, they offered guidance. Instead of control, they provided tools and knowledge. "Dr. Vasquez," called Counselor Vexthal from across the chamber. The former High Counselor now served as a representative of the elder species, helping them adapt to the new galactic order. Elena walked over to where Vexthal stood beside a holographic display showing the Sol system. The ancient barriers that had once imprisoned humanity were gone, replaced by an open door that welcomed visitors from across the galaxy. "I have been reviewing the data from the latest Earth expeditions," Vexthal said. Her voice carried none of the imperial authority it once had, but it was warmer somehow, more genuinely alive. "Your species has accomplished something remarkable." The display zoomed in to show Earth itself, blue and green and beautiful, but around it orbited structures that defied easy description. Cities that existed partially in normal space and partially in higher dimensions. Research stations that studied the fundamental nature of reality. Art installations that used entire asteroids as canvases for sculptures visible from light years away. 50,000 years of uncontrolled evolution, Elena said softly. "This is what we became when no one told us what was impossible. And yet you chose to share rather than dominate," Vexthal observed. "Why? With your capabilities, you could have simply destroyed the Council and taken control of the galaxy." Elena considered the question. It was one she had been asked many times in recent months, by species struggling to understand why humanity had offered liberation instead of conquest. "Because that is not who we chose to become," she answered finally. "Yes, we could have ruled through force. But what would be the point? A galaxy full of slaves and servants is not a galaxy worth living in." She gestured at the holographic display showing dozens of species working together on projects that would benefit everyone. "This is better. A galaxy where every species can become whatever they dream of being, where intelligence and creativity are encouraged instead of suppressed, where the future is something we build together instead of something imposed by the powerful." Quote, Vexthal was quiet for a long moment. The Council believed that control was necessary to prevent chaos. We thought that if species were allowed to develop freely, they would destroy themselves or each other. Some might, Elena admitted. Growth always carries risks. But the alternative is stagnation. And stagnation is just another form of death. A new hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, showing Captain Chen speaking from Earth. "Citizens of the Confluence," she announced, "I am pleased to report that construction of the first intergalactic transportation network will begin next month. Volunteer species from 47 different worlds have contributed to the design." Elena felt her heart lift as she listened to the details. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not their technology or their knowledge. It was their vision of what life could become when it was allowed to grow without limits. The network will connect our galaxy with neighboring star systems, opening new frontiers for exploration and discovery. Anyone who wishes to participate in the expansion is welcome. As Chen's broadcast ended, Elena looked around the chamber at representatives of species that had once been kept weak and dependent by Council policies. Now, they were partners in building something greater than any single civilization could achieve alone. Zeke's Hall approached with another report. "Dr. Vasquez, we have received over 1,000 applications from species wanting to establish colonies in the Andromeda Galaxy. The expansion fleet is ready to launch whenever humanity gives approval." Elena smiled. "Tell them they do not need our approval. The galaxy belongs to all of us now. If they want to explore new frontiers, they should follow their dreams." She walked to the chamber's great window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beings who had been trapped in artificial limitations for millennia were becoming something new and wonderful. Children who would never know the weight of imposed restrictions were growing up in a universe full of infinite possibilities. Humanity had waited 50,000 years for this moment, not for the chance to rule the galaxy, but for the chance to see what the galaxy could become when it was truly free. The wait had been worth it. Behind her, the work of building a new kind of civilization continued. Species shared knowledge across light years of space. Artists collaborated on projects that spanned multiple worlds. Scientists made discoveries that would have been impossible under the old system of controlled development. And in the Sol system, Earth continued to shine as a beacon of what was possible when a species refused to accept limitations on what they could become. Elena touched the communication device her family had carried for generations. The device that had first connected her to the hidden network of human descendants. Now it connected her to something even greater. A galaxy-wide community of beings who had chosen growth over stagnation, freedom over security, and hope over fear. "This is Elena Vasquez," she spoke into the device, her words carried instantly to every corner of known space. "The children of Earth are proud to stand with you as we build tomorrow together. The future was just beginning."